morning, good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to today's Exploring by the Seat of Your Pants event. My name is Joe Gorowski, and I'll be your host for today. If this is your first time tuning in with us this month, we are well into our space exploration month. So all month long, we've been talking to scientists and explorers, researchers, engineers, and of course, astronauts, learning about what it takes to leave our planet, explore the solar system, and beyond into the universe. And then, of course, turning a lens back at Earth and exploring our planet in ways we never could before. So there is still lots of space exploration action coming your way. If you visit exploringbytheseat.com, you can find all those lessons, plus some other fun stuff still happening before November. But today we're going to do one of my favorite things to do, and I know lots of students love this, and that is to head out live into the field. So this time around, we are going to join Roxanne and Maddie out in the field in California on the beach at Año Nuevo Coast Preserve. And we're going to learn about elephant seals, the elephant seals that call these beaches home for parts of the year. And we're going to get a chance to see them, learn a little bit about what they're researching and studying with the elephant seals. And then, of course, we'll have lots of time for Q&A action. So let's see if I reach backstage, if I can find some scientists waiting in California. Let's see. Maddie, Roxanne, how are you?
Hi, Joe. Hi, everyone. Thank you so much for having us.
Excellent. Well, it's great to have you here live with us. Looks like the start of a beautiful day there.
Yeah, it's about 9:30 in the morning here in California. Maddie and I are on the beach. We just finished a few hours of observations of elephant seals, and we're super excited to show you guys what we're looking at here.
Excellent. Well, I think this is the clearest connectivity we've ever had before, so that's pretty cool. We've got classrooms across Canada and the US hanging out with us. They're going to play some Kahoot later. They're going to ask some questions. But for now, I'm going to make you guys full screen and let you take over for a bit.
Awesome. Thanks so much, Joe. I think we'll start with some quick introductions. So hi, everybody. My name is Roxanne Beltran. I am a professor at UC Santa Cruz, which means that I do a lot of research and teaching and a little bit of community outreach, sharing my joy for seals and the marine environment so that lots of people can be motivated to protect our planet. I'm a member of National Geographic Explorers and also the Explorers Club. And so one of the things I love most is not only exploring the world myself, but also partnering with the seals so that they can tell us what they learn when they explore. And I'll introduce you to my graduate student, Maddie.
Hi, everybody. I'm Maddie. I'm a graduate student in Roxanne's lab. So I also do a bunch of research stuff as well as teaching. And my dissertation, or my thing that I'm studying for my PhD, is studying why seals go where they do and then why they go to those places over and over and over again. So, yeah.
So we were out this morning doing a bunch of really cool research. And if Maddie shows us her hands, you'll see that they're a little bit speckled in black. And that's because we've been putting some marks out on some elephant seals. So we are on the beach at Año Nuevo, which is an elephant seal colony. And a lot of the seals here have small flipper tags, which we'll show you a little bit later, that help us keep track of the individual seals. And then when we see a seal with a flipper tag, we can add a dye mark. So if you look at that seal right there, I'm going to use my finger to try to point at it. If you look on the right side of the seal, hopefully you can see a little bit of a dye mark. It says M647. And if you have really, really, really good eyesight, you might be able to see a green flipper tag in the rear flipper of that seal. So that is a 1-year-old seal. It has a flipper tag, green tag M647. And we've been tracking that seal for its entire life so far. So just 1 year. But if I pan you over here to the rest of the seals, you'll see a bunch of older seals. The older ones are bigger, so you can usually tell. I think the oldest seal on the beach today was probably about 6 years old. She's an adult female. And then there's a bunch of kind of 1 and 2 and 3-year-old seals here on the beach. So one of our research questions is, how old do the seals live to be? And it turns out that the oldest seal we've ever tracked was about 21 years old. So she was flipper tagged as a female pup here on the beach. And then we tracked her every single year of her life for 21 years. We saw her over 400 times. And she's one of our favorite seals because she helps us understand not just about her and about elephant seals, but also about the marine environment. So we like studying the seals because they're on land, but they spend most of their time out in the open ocean. And if you can tell that I'm kind of screaming at you, it's because the ocean's really loud today. You can see the waves are actually pretty big, maybe 5 or 6 feet tall or something like that. But the seals come here, they rest a little bit, and then they go back out to the beach and they spend their time out there diving for, on average, about 20 minutes while holding their breath. They dive down, they find some fish to eat it, and then come back up to the surface to breathe. And they do that for somewhere between 5 and 7 months continuously. For the adult females, that means they're leaving the beach in about June, and then they're coming back sometime between now and like February. And when they come back during kind of the middle of winter, they often give birth to pups. And so that 21-year-old seal I was telling you about, we learned a lot about her and her pups by just observing them every day. So a lot of our days are like me and Maddie driving the truck up with a couple of students that we get to work with, and basically getting our cameras and our binoculars and coming out to the beach so that we can figure out which seals are here, and we can record a lot of information about them. So I'll tell you a little bit more about the types of information that we record, and then we'll go back to the seals. So some of the information we record is like how old we think they are. If they're a male or a female, we can usually tell based on like how big their noses are, because the males have noses and the females don't. We can also record during the molting season in the spring, we can record how much of their fur coat they've replaced, and that's really helpful. During the breeding season, we can record if they have a pup or not. Sometimes they narrowly escape the jaws of death, so they run into a white shark or an orca, and they get kind of scarred up. They'll get big wounds, so we can record that. We can record anything else, like if they have any sorts of, I don't know, like they're kind of limping around, maybe they hurt their flipper on something. And all that information goes into our database, and we can look up information from different seals to see, how they're growing up and how successful they've been at producing pups. So with the females that I was telling you about, the pup information is really useful because we can basically tell how healthy the ocean is by how well the seals are doing, which sounds kind of crazy. But when the ocean is in kind of rougher condition, the seals don't find as much food, and then they don't gain as much fat, and then they're less likely to give birth to a pup. And even if they do give birth to the pup tends to be smaller, and it doesn't tend to survive as often. And so we can get a really good sense for the health of the ocean just by measuring the seals' foraging success, measuring how much mass they gain when they're out at sea, and then observing them to see which ones have a pup. And then what happens is when the pups finish suckling milk from their moms, then we give them flipper tags and they join our study population. And so over about 60 years, researchers here have studied about 50,000 seals, just like that one with that M mark that I showed you a little bit earlier. And so we have a ton of information about how the ocean has changed over the last 60 years and how the seals have sort of figured out how to navigate their new normal of maybe some years with more fish and some years with less. But one of the research questions that we've had for a long time is why individual seals tend to do the same things over and over. So even though the ocean is changing, and even though the different seals are pretty different from one another, we see, for example, that some adult females tend to go to the same places and eat the same things. And so that's what Maddie is studying for her dissertation. And maybe I'll pass it to her so she can tell you a little bit more about like the types of things she's interested in the seals and why she's interested in those things.
Yeah, hey guys. So for my PhD, which basically is a very, very long research project, it's about 5 years. I'm looking into why seals do the same thing over and over again. And specifically, I'm really interested in when they do that when they're out at the sea, during their foraging migrations or during their big trips where they're going to get food. And so it's really interesting to understand why they do that, because if they're going to the same places over and over again, even if the prey is different, even if the resources look different every single year, and we're kind of curious as to like why they would do that if it's not necessarily in their best interest to do that. So it might be a better idea or better for their fitness, if we like to call it, or like their reproduction and survival to do different things in relation to how the ocean is doing. But if they're doing the same thing over and over again, that can give us a pretty good indication and idea of what's happening in the ocean, and where the ocean is very similar, because if they're doing something over and over again, maybe they're doing it because the ocean's also the same.
So that's one of the many, many research questions that we have. And we have a lot of tools that we use out here. We use binoculars and cameras to find the seals. And then sorry, little pollinator, no big deal. And then we also use instruments that we can attach to the animals. They're really small. We call them biologgers. And that's what Maddie's going to use for her dissertation. So there is actually one seal on the beach, and we'll see if we can find him, that has a biologger on his head right now. I think we'll tell you a little bit about what the biologgers measure, and then we'll take you down for a little adventure to the beach to see if we can go find that seal. So the biologgers do a whole bunch of different stuff. They can measure things like where the seals are going, how deep they're diving, the temperature of the water, how salty the water is. Sometimes they even have advanced capabilities where they can actually measure how much fish is in the ocean water column, which is super cool because it helps us learn a lot about the marine environment. So I think what we're going to do now is we're going to take you down a little bit closer to the seals. We're in kind of a little quiet area around the corner right now, so it's probably going to be a little bit louder out there. So I'm going to just be quiet for a few minutes, and I'll take you a little bit closer to see some of the seals. And then we'll probably come back and do the Kahoot and answer some questions. So I'm going to walk you down there right now, and then we'll give you a couple minutes to see the seals. I see one mark that I'm going to walk over and show you guys, and then I'll come back to this group here. So hopefully you guys can see both that white flipper tag right there, but also the mark on the side of that seal, W6625. And then you'll see, we told you the waves are kind of big, so the seals are kind of getting thrown around a little bit by the ocean. But let's go ahead and walk over up and above these seals. We'll give you a slightly better view. So I'll talk you through some of what we're seeing over here. You can see some of these males are really curious. They like to play with each other. So these two boys right here are going to have a little fight. And then a lot of these seals are just getting some rest. They've had a long morning already. If you look at this one flipping sand right here, that's actually an adult female. So that's about a 4 or 5-year-old female. We're not exactly sure why some of the females come to the beach during the fall. It's pretty abnormal. Usually they come in January or February to give birth to pups, but we think it might be an adaptation that they have when they skip a year of pupping. So they kind of come a little bit early. They don't have to deal with the chaos of breeding season. They can relax here next to the juveniles, recover some of their body condition, kind of get their energy stores feeling good again, and then hopefully produce a pup the following year. I see it. We found the seal with the satellite tag. So I don't actually think I can zoom my camera. But if you look at the water line here, there's two seals fighting. And one of them has a satellite tag on its head. Also has a mark that starts with K88 something. One question that we get a lot is why the seals spend a lot of time by the water. And we don't really know, but one of the reasons we think is that they might get a little bit hot. So they dip in the water. The boys tend to do that. If they fight a lot, they get really hot. Then they'll kind of go in the water to dip. Another reason is during the breeding season, there's often a dominant male that kind of scares the other males away. And so then they'll go into the water to sort of reset before they try to sneak into a group of females again. One thing I want to point out is you can see this male at the end of my finger with sort of the blonde neck. He's starting to develop his nose. So if you look really closely, you can see his nose is starting to droop a little bit. And that's really different than like if we look at, for example, this 1-year-old right here who's looking back at us. He doesn't have that nose droop yet. So that's something the boys get around 3 or 4 years old. And it's another clue that we use to figure out if one of the seals is a male or a female. So I think this morning we probably saw somewhere around like 50 animals with flipper tags or marks. This is one of the groups, but there's also another group a little bit further away. Maybe I'll just show you guys a couple individual seals and then we'll go back up to our little quiet perch so we can hear you guys crush some Kahoots and answer a couple questions for you. We'll point out some stuff along the way. There's some more boys fighting in the water line. There's a mark by the water. If you can look right above my finger, it looks like K127 on the right. And you can see his nose is also starting to droop. He's maybe like 3 years old. So you can see his nose almost touching the ground. Usually they're about 4 or 5 years old when the nose starts to touch the ground. But the females don't have those noses when they're adults. So it's an easy way to tell them apart. I'm going to be quiet for a second and just walk you guys over to a couple sleeping seals so you can see them up close. There's another little fight going on with some boys. And then there's our satellite tag seal. If you can see at the very tip of my finger, he has his head up right now. He's got a little square instrument on his head. See if I can get a little bit closer to him. He's just at the tip of my finger. You can see his back right now. And the mark K883. See if he peeks his head up for you guys. You can actually see his flipper tag, that little green tag right there. So this is what a pretty typical morning looks like for us. Getting to know the seals a little bit more, seeing which ones are here, which ones aren't. Trying to guess why the ones that aren't here, if they're exploring in some other place, or if they've died at sea because they ran into a shark or an orca and couldn't make it past, or maybe they're just going to come to the beach a little bit later. Maybe something about their year made them a little bit behind in their annual cycle. So there's never a shortage of things that we can study about the seals, which is one of the reasons that we really like them. There's that boy with the satellite tag, sticking his head up. All right, Joe, how do we feel about doing that Kahoot?
I think that sounds absolutely great. As you make your way back to higher ground for the Q&A action, Roxanne, the satellite tags that you're putting on, about how long are they able to stay underwater? What have they told you?
Great question. So the seals can dive really deep. They can dive 1,000 meters, which is about 3,000 feet. And the seals can hold their breath for 2 hours. So I told you before that usually they only hold their breath for about 20 minutes on average. But that's just like, going for a short little dive. They can dive up to 2 hours. It's one of the longest dives that any mammal can do while holding its breath, which is really cool. And then those trips are about 7 months long, which means that the seals can collect so much data. The tags last the whole trip. So when they bring those tags back, we can get all sorts of information about how deep the seals were diving, how long they were diving, how much fish they were catching, and all sorts of other stuff. So that's been a really useful part of our research program. And one of the really cool things is we found that bigger seals can dive for longer and hold their breath for longer too. So there seems to be a real benefit of being large for the.
All right. Well, I'm going to share my screen. We're going to get the Kahoot up here front and center. We're going to get classrooms in here with us, and then we are going to play that Kahoot. So you should see this coming up on the screen now. I'm going to hit start. There are 2 things you need to do to come in here and join us. The first is to go to kahoot.it. Kahoot.it. For today is 140-3073. Not, this should already be up at the front of your classroom, and you can shout out your answers to your teacher. If you're at home, that QR code is super handy for scanning with a phone or scanning with a tablet. So I'm watching our animal names coming in here, and I'm looking to see if any of our auto-generated names are going to be seal related. There's a silly otter, so getting closer. There, let's see. A focused walrus, getting even closer. So we'll see if we have any seal-related auto-generated names come in here. While that's happening, Roxanne, I'm going to ask you a couple questions from the chat while the students are joining us.
That sounds great.
So first question I have here is from a virtual elementary school, and they're wondering, why are they throwing the sand like that? What's it do for them?
That's such a great question. We ask ourselves that all the time because technically we don't actually know the answer to that. People think that it might have to do with thermoregulation, so the seals keeping themselves at a good temperature. Just like you and I, the seals are mammals. That means they want to stay around 98.6 degrees Fahrenheit or 37 degrees Celsius all the time. But unlike us, they don't have jackets, they don't have blankets. And so we think they might use the sand to help them stay warm or to stay cool. So sometimes on sunny days, we see them flipping a lot of sand. It might be kind of like sunscreen. On cold days, we also see them flipping sand, maybe to warm themselves up a little bit. So science actually doesn't know the answer, but if you want to find out, come be an explorer with us.
All right. Elena in grade 2 would like to know why they're fighting on the beach. Why do we see so many of them fighting?
That's a good question. Yeah. So the males, they like to fight. That's kind of their job as males in this in the elephant seal society, is that they fight for the girls, for the female. And so they fight for ownership of a little harem, a little group of females that they can then breed with and make feel babies. And so that's what they're trying to do. But right now, these ones are actually still like juveniles. They're still younger than the adults. And so they're not actually truly fighting. They're kind of like playing or like practicing fighting for when we get to the breeding season and they have to start actually fighting to defend their territory.
All right. One more quick question before we start the Kahoot. This is from a crew joining us out on the east coast of Canada. We saw different colorations. Does that mean something, or did they just come in a variety of colors?
Question, yeah. So some of the difference of color is just because some of them are super wet right now. They were just in the water. And so the ones that are like super silvery might just be wet because they were in the ocean. That makes them look a little bit more gray. And there are some differences in color in like the actual coat that the animal has, like the fur, the color of their fur. And we're not specifically sure why they're super, super different. Something sometimes has to do with how far they are from when they molted or when like their new fur came on. So kind of like your like dog or your cat, they molt their fur off. And so some of them are further away from when they molted it. And so that fur looks a little bit less nice and so more like yellowish. And so the newer fur is closer to like that kind of silvery gray color.
All right. We are ready for some Kahoot. We've got true or false. We've got multiple choice. As always, the quicker you put the right answer in, the more points you're going to get. Here we go. Question 1, a nice warm-up coming your way. Where is this elephant seal beach or preserve? Is it in Oregon? Is it in New York? Is it in California? Or is it in North Carolina? Should be an easy warm-up question for our classrooms. Where are we right now? Are we in Oregon, New York, California, or North Carolina? You've got a couple more seconds. All right, no fool in this crew. The vast majority went with California. Let's take a look at our leaderboard. The mystery flamingo holding down the top spot. We've got another question coming your way. What's the longest that Roxanne, Maddie, and the team have tracked a seal for? Was it about 5 years, about 10 years, about 20 years, or about 30 years? So what's the longest that they've tracked a seal for? About 5, about 10, about 20 years, or about 30 years? Got a little extra time because this is a bit of a thinking question. There's different options. You've got about 7 seconds to get your response locked in. 5, 10, 20, or 30 years. All right. These students are sharp. 21 years, I believe, was that answer. The fast gator has raced into top spot, but the focused walrus is down there in 4th place. Maybe they're going to have a big push and take this in the end. So true or false? Killer whales are not predators of elephant seals. What do you think? Is that true or false? Killer whales or orcas are not predators of elephant seals. True or false? 10 seconds to lock something in, and then we'll go on to our leaderboard again. All right. Overwhelmingly, we went with false. I think killer whales, along with like the great white sharks, are probably some of the only things big enough to handle an elephant seal. Let's go to the noble griffin taking that top spot. Here we go with another quiz question. Elephant seals can hold their breath for 2 minutes, 30 minutes, 1 hour, or as long as 2 hours. So elephant seals, when they go on a dive, if they're pushing it to the max, they can hold it for 2 minutes, for 30 minutes, an hour, or as much as 2 hours. You have 2 more seconds. All right. Good job, crew. Overwhelmingly, we went with about 2 hours. Noble Griffin is holding on. 1 more to go. True or false? We can tell how healthy the ocean is based on how healthy the seals are. What do you think? Is that true or false? The seals, they're a good indicator of the health of the ocean. If they're healthy, that means the ocean's probably pretty healthy too. What do you think? True or false? 8 more seconds, and then we are off to Q&A. We're going to get some classroom faces on camera, which will be great. There we go. True. Overwhelmingly. So our podium in 3rd place, we've got the Dr. Rhino. In 2nd place, the glowing eel. And holding down that top spot, What do we got? The Noble Griffin holding on for the last few questions. All right. I'm going to turn off this screen share. I'm going to turn off that music. And we're going to go to Q&A action. So if you're on YouTube, keep those questions coming. If you're tuning in via YouTube, backstage, I'm going to bring you in. And then I notice we have 5-6 from Tom Thompson with us. Looks like your mic's not connected, but if you put those questions in the chat, we'll be able to get those for you. So let's go to a class not too far away from you, Miss Barha's crew in California. How are you doing today?
How fast can seals run on land?
Ooh,
That's a good question.
faster than us.
Yeah. You would think they're like, so they don't have like legs or arms. They probably right?
Roxanne, can you turn the mic a little closer to Maddie? For some reason, we're losing some of her sound.
Try upside down. How's that?
Sorry, is that better? Can you hear me now?
Way better. Yeah.
Okay, great. Yeah. So yeah, it's a good question. So basically, because they don't have like arms or legs, you would think that they're pretty slow on the land, but they're actually pretty quick. They're pretty faster than you might think. What they do is they'll take their flippers and they'll start to like move themselves, and then once they start moving, they kind of like they'll lump on the sand, and they can get pretty fast. I think I just looked it up, and it's like 10 miles per hour. They can get pretty quick. Yeah. Good question.
Thank you.
All right. California crew, do you have one more before we check in with another class?
Are you gonna ask a question? Just what is it? Can the seals attack humans?
Did you hear that, Joe? Sorry, it's a little loud here.
Yeah. Can the seals attack humans? Do you ever worry about?
Oh, great question.
Yeah. So good question. Because of where we are right now, we're on a state reserve. So people are not really allowed to come down and see the seals and interact with them and touch them and stuff. So the only people that are really in any danger are us as researchers, and we have a lot of really good training to stay away from them and not to bother them too much so that they don't. They can, in theory, come at us, and sometimes they can get a little bit chasey, like they try to come, curious, get near you, or tell you to back away. But as long as you respond to their cues, we don't really have any problems with it.
Thank you.
All right. Thanks, Ms. Barha's crew. We'll see if we have time to check in one more time. We're going to stick with the West Coast, but this time in Canada, and head to Miss T's grade 3-4s and see if they have a question for us.
My question is, what things do they do to play?
What things do they do
To play.
play? They definitely play a lot with each other, which is pretty funny. They also play with themselves sometimes. Like they'll kind of bite their rear flippers or like scratch themselves. And the other thing that we see them do sometimes is there's some willow trees around where they are, and sometimes they'll kind of like chew at the willows. They don't actually eat them. They're not like land herbivores, but they will play with them a little bit. And we think it might be just to sort of entertain themselves.
All right. You got another question in there, Mrs. T's crew?
Yep, coming up.
All right.
My name is Bianca, and my question is, when they go in the water, do they go in packs or by themselves?
That's a good question. Yeah, so what we've noticed when we put the instruments, the biolog on their heads, is that they actually don't really interact that much with each other. The ocean is a really, really big place, and so they tend to go to their own little sections of the ocean and look for prey spots that are different from each other, right? Because if you're all going together, then you might come to the same prey area, and then you might have too many seals trying to get the same resources of the same fish and the same prey. So a lot of times they go in their separate little locations. Great question.
All right. Thanks, crew. Good job, 3-4s. Before I grab another camera classroom, we do have 5-6s from Burlington, Ontario with us. They're backstage, but their mic's not connected. But they sent us a few questions in the chat. So the first one they're asking about, we know about the orcas, but what other predators might elephant seals have?
Yeah, another good question. Yeah, so elephant seals are really big, especially the adult females and the adult males. The adult males can get up to 2 tons, which is 2,000 pounds. And so not very many things can actually eat an elephant seal. That's a big animal, right? So a lot of the times it's just those killer whales that are really big animals as well. And then great white sharks are another shark species, like species that can actually eat an elephant seal. We do see sometimes that some animals have like wounds and like gashes from different like smaller shark species. But a lot of times they can't actually take an entire animal down.
Okay. One more from our Burlington crew. They're wondering, on the beach, are there any pups right now, and how young would they be right now this time of year?
Yeah, so right now we don't have any pups on the beach at the moment. We're not in the breeding season. So elephants are super special because they only breed at certain parts in the year. So they only breed in the winter. So around like January, December to like February, they have babies, and then those babies grow up for about a month, and then their moms leave them, and then the babies go out in the ocean and do their own first foraging trip. And so that's kind of like the life cycle or annual cycle of the species. And so right now we're in the fall time, so only the juveniles of like the little guys, like the years 1 to like 4, are on the beach at the moment. So no pups right now, unfortunately.
Although there are technically potentially pregnant seals on the beach. So if you count fetuses, like maybe a 7-month-old pup inside a female, that female might be here now and then come back in January to give birth. So no pups that we can see, but lots of pregnant females out swimming in the open ocean, hopefully going to come back in the next month or 2.
All right. Very cool. Illinois, 4th graders. Let's get them up on screen. How are we doing today, 4th graders?
Good. And actually, we're 4th and 5th graders.
All right.
Guys,
Better.
we need to quiet down. Josiah, come on up. No, Josiah. So come in front of here so they can see your face.
I was wondering, how do you mark them? Like,
Good.
you know how you like mark like the numbers and stuff.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So we have basically a stick and we have hair dye. And so we basically draw out on our like big plank what the mark is. So for example, the one you saw earlier was M647. And so we'll draw it backwards, and then we'll take the stick that has like a plank and then like a pole, and then we'll go up to the most peak behind the seal, and then we'll stamp the mark on the side of the seal.
Cool. Okay, we have another one. Do we get another one?
Of course.
Here, Bella. There we go.
Oh, you're being watched by
How many different species are there of elephant seal?
There's 2. So we have the northern elephant seal. Do you want to guess what the elephant seal is that's in the southern hemisphere?
The southern
Yeah.
elephant seals.
You got it. Good job. The southern elephant seal. So those are the 2 species of elephant seals that there are, but there's a whole lot of other seal species like Weddell seals in Antarctica, harbor seals that we have here, and then things like ringed seals and spotted seals up near Alaska. So lots of species of seals, but only 2 elephant seal species. So we're super lucky to have one.
All right. Thanks to our crew in Illinois. We're going to try and come back for I think we can squeeze in a lightning camera round. But before I do that, I want to check YouTube quickly and see what we have. So Caesar is joining us all the way from Nicaragua. And Caesar is wondering if they're sensitive to sounds. So, loud sounds, unusual sounds, would that bother them?
Yeah. So while we're on the beach, they can be pretty sensitive to sounds. A lot of the sounds are like the ocean sounds or each other. So like they'll vocalize or like make sounds at each other when they're fighting or when they're nearby each other. And then when we're on the beach, you can definitely tell like when we're having a conversation or we get near a seal, they can actually sense that we're there, and then they'll come and like look at us and try to like scope us out and stuff like that. Do you want to talk about the sounds in the ocean?
Yeah, the sounds in the ocean are a lot harder to answer because it's hard to measure sound in the ocean, especially when the seals are out like halfway between California and Japan in the middle of the ocean. But we recently worked with a bunch of colleagues to develop an acoustic logger, a sound microphone and recording device that can be small enough to be glued to the back of a seal. And my graduate student, Allison, is studying how the seals respond to noises that the tag records, because presumably the seals hear those same noises. So she's found, for example, that when they hear a predator or a boat, anything that they're kind of scared of, the seals do this behavior where they dive even deeper for even longer to try to get away from the noise. So we think they use noise a lot to sort of figure out where the threats are in the ocean, and then they behave in a way that makes them be able to avoid those threats, which is pretty cool.
All right. On the beach right now, this is one of the biggest groups I think that we've had live, and probably the best signal we've had. The connectivity today is great. So this virtual elementary school is wondering, in your best guess, how many seals are with you on the beach right now?
Ooh, okay, Maddie and I are going to each come up with independent numbers.
Okay.
Like just north here, just here. I'm going to guess 250. Maddie says?
I was going to go 180. So it's a bit of like between
we'll call it 220 on average.
All right. Sounds fair. Okay, let's do a lightning speed round. So we'll start with Illinois. Do you have one more question for us in Illinois?
Quiet.
I was wondering, how smart are the seals?
Different animals. So mammals, like we're also mammals, and so they have pretty high ability to sense what's going on around them. They know where they're going in the ocean. One really cool part about elephant seals is that they have a super long migration, like 8 months, right? And then they'll go out in the middle of the ocean, and they'll always come back to this beach. So they have, we call it site fidelity, or the likelihood of coming back to the same location, and it's very, very high. And so if I was in the middle of the ocean and I was trying to find my way back to my house, I don't think that I could do that. So they're pretty smart.
All right. Thanks, 4 5s. Those were great questions. Back to California. Miss Barha's crew, do you have another question for us?
How much can they eat per day?
How much can they eat per day?
Yeah.
Oh man, so much. I don't think I actually know the answer to that question. I can tell you how much weight they can gain per day, which is about 2 kilograms, which is like 4.5 pounds of body weight that they gain per day. And if we do some math and we figure out they're losing about half of the efficiency of their food and the whole digestion process and the creation of tissue and stuff, let's call it like maybe 9 pounds of food per day, something like that. I could be off by like 50%, but a lot more than us, that's for sure.
All right, that's a lot of food. All right, Miss Barha's crew, thanks for your awesome questions. Mrs. T's, 3rd and 4th graders.
How fast can they swim?
How fast can they swim? So, great question. In terms of like burst speed, like if you were to go to a track and sprint as fast as you could, that equivalent for the seals is probably about 3 meters per second. So that's like 9 feet per second, which is pretty fast. We usually think about it more like how far can they swim in a single day. And usually when they're coming back from their foraging trips, it's about 100 kilometers per day, which is something like 70-ish miles. So imagine like if you know anyone who's ever run a marathon, imagine a seal running 3 marathons in a single day. And they do that for like weeks on end, which is pretty impressive, I think.
All right. Thanks, Mrs. T's crew. Great questions. Okay, one more from our Burlington crew who's backstage. They're wondering, the older seals, are they faster or slower than the younger seals on land?
Land.
These are great questions.
Super good questions.
Yeah, I mean, I would probably say the older boys are a lot faster. They're the ones we're really scared of because once they get going, they have so much momentum, like thousands of pounds of momentum. We do know that when the female seals get really old, they start to slow down a little bit. They tend to produce pups less, and their pups might be a little bit smaller. And so we think there is some evidence of what we call senescence, basically like a little bit of a decline at old age. But no one's ever measured their speed on land relative to their age, as far as I know. So again, lots of great questions for lots of different people, including you guys, to explore if you stick with science as your thing you want to do when you grow up.
All right. Well, I want to start off with a huge shout out to all of our classrooms, all the students hanging out with us today. Great questions from our camera groups. YouTube, of course, great questions sent in. Thanks to everybody for playing Kahoot. In fact, a few classes had to duck out for their lunch, but I still have a few hanging out back here with me. So there's a few of them back there. Hey, everybody. Roxanne and Maddie, thank you so much for spending some time with us. All right. Thanks, everyone. Have a great rest of the week, and hopefully we see you some more in October. Thanks, everyone.